Good evening, everyone. It's true pleasure and honor to welcome you all to this special event organized by the Teaching English Young Learners Special Interest Group, TEYL SEG. So, as many as you know, that TESOL is a vibrant community dedicated to supporting and empowering English language educators across Egypt and beyond. And within this community, the TEYL SEG focuses specifically on one of the most dynamic and impactful areas in our field. It's about teaching of English to young learners. So, as you know, young learners are not just students, they are explorers, creators, and the foundation of the future. So, teaching them goes beyond language and it's about shaping their confidence, curiosity, and lifelong love of learning. Our SIG was created to support educators who embrace this challenge with dedication, creativity, and care. So, this is our goal of TEYL site, creating unified channel for TEYL members, improve English teaching standards for young learners, discuss new TEYL strategies and approaches, provide experts and teachers networking opportunities, accelerate TEYL related outcomes. So here, I'd like you to actually join us on Facebook page to get more ideas, activities, and strategies. Please scan this QR code provided in on this slide. Okay, I will just give you 1 minute. Yes. Okay, and you get you will get with all of the updates. And that's very important. So we kindly ask you to share your feedback with us. It truly means a lot and help us grow. So while working on this um, presentation and the session, please just scan this QR code and give us your feedback. So here, actually, it's a pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Kate Reynolds, who is a professor of TESOL literacy at Central Washington University, a licensed K-12 educator. She has taught teachers in several countries and multilingual learners of English in public school districts at elementary, middle schools, and universities in various contexts. Reynolds' books and articles include Decentering Advocacy in English Language Teaching, Global Perspectives and Local Practices, Introduction to TESOL, Becoming a Language Teaching Professional, and K-12 Classroom Research in Language Teaching and Learning, Narratives for Understanding and Engaging in Teacher Research. Currently, Dr. Reynolds serves on the TESOL International Association Board of Directors 2022-2025, and actually she brings a wealth of knowledge and practical insights of today's session. She will speak about meaningful practice, engaging tasks for English learners in K-12 schools. This topic that is especially relevant and valuable to us as educators of young learners. So please join me and in welcoming Dr. Reynolds. Hello, Dr. Reynolds.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. So I want to thank you all for inviting me here to speak to your SIG, your Early Learner SIG at NIL TESOL, and it's my true honor. And I want to thank you, Ezra Mohammed, for spending so much time with me getting everything set up over the last several weeks. So you've been truly patient with my crazy busy schedule. So thank you so much.
Actually, we have to thank you for accepting this invitation. And actually, the slides are full of wonderful and beneficial activities that will, yes, astonish you.
Well, that's the hope. And so hopefully I'll have enough time to kind of unpack everything. But if we don't have time, there's enough information in the slides that people can read the things that we don't get to, and it will make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
course. So you are
Okay.
now a co-host.
Okay, thank you. And let's do that. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Okay, I will stop sharing. Now you can share. Yeah.
Yes, you can see? Okay, great. So, thank you again, everyone, for having me here today. I'm very honored. And I have to tell you, Egypt is always in my heart. I have been fascinated by Egypt since I was a young person. And having visited there twice now, I feel very close to the people of Egypt. Everyone's so kind and welcoming. My daughter once said years ago, "My life doesn't begin until I go to Egypt." So I had to take her. So, and now she's saying, I need to go back to Egypt. I'm like, do you realize how many Americans get to go to Egypt in their lifetime?
Yeah. And
And
yeah, we are waiting for you.
well, there might be a chance for her to go come back in the near future. So fingers crossed.
Yeah,
So,
can't wait to see you.
so today's talk will be meaningful practice, engaging tasks for English learners in the K to 12 schools and beyond. Um, these tasks and activities that I'll show you today really can be adapted to any grade level. And the idea is that once you learn the name of the task and how it's structured, you can put it into any curriculum anywhere. So that was my goal, is to be very meaning focused and activity focused, as opposed to spending a lot of time on theory and kind of some of the more known information to you. But I will talk a little bit about that today. So this is a picture of an Egyptian classroom that I found online. And I hope it is an Egyptian classroom because it said it was an Egyptian classroom. So you never know with the internet, right? Um, but what strikes me is that the teacher is talking and the students are maybe listening. Some of them are looking at him, some of them aren't. But look at the expressions on their faces. Only a couple look happy, and I think they're actually kind of laughing at somebody off camera or smiling at somebody off camera. The rest of the students just look not engaged, let us say. Let us say not engaged. And we can turn this around. In a classroom where you've got the setup where you've got two students sitting together at tables and you've got rows of students, we can change that dynamic. So when we are thinking of our classroom environments, we don't get to change the seating of those classrooms much. And commonly, we have students in rows, as you see in the teacher-centered image there. The students are marked with an S and the T with the teacher with a T. And usually it's the teacher talking at the students. And occasionally you might have a student response, but often it's not a lot of student talk. But if we reconceptualize and change our mindset, the way we think about interaction in our classrooms, the way we even think about students working together in our classrooms, it changes the dynamic of who's using the language and how much practice there is. So in the student-centered model, we have students who are working in little quads, in little groups of 4. Oh, and by the way, if I'm speaking too quickly, just tell me, slow it down, please. I'll make sure I have the chat on so I can see if anybody says, please slow down. So I'm going to move this around so I can see anybody commenting. Okay, so in this, if you could still have students seated at those tables, but they turn around, the front group turns around and talks to the one behind them, and so forth. So you're actually having students talk to each other or collaboratively write together. And you'll see with the bright pink, these are student interactions, whereas the teachers interacting with students and students are interacting with the teachers. There's a whole lot of talk or writing or communicating in general going on in a student-centered classroom. And that's what we want our target to be, even if it means our classrooms are going to be a little bit more loud. But I promise you I'll address that by the end of the talk today. So when we modify our instruction toward that interaction, we can think about 3 categories of activities and tasks. And I'm going to talk about these three categories. The first one is the close-ended activities that are language exercises. That's the first category. The second category is open-ended activities that are very communicative based. And I'm going to define all of these, so don't worry. And then the last category is tasks that are communicative and have distinct characteristics of tasks. So when we look at close-ended exercises, am I doing okay with talking at a good speed? If I am, Ezra, you can just not. If you want me to slow down, say slow it down. Yes, Samar, you'll get the PDF of the talk, and all the hyperlinks will be there for you too. So close-ended language exercises are things you've seen before. These types of exercises have one right answer or a very small set of correct answers. And I've said, you've seen it a million times before. There are things like multiple choice questions or fill in the blank, where a student might complete a sentence, or matching two items together. Dehydrated sentences, I don't know if you've seen those before. They're very common in the US, where you have maybe a pronoun and the verb not conjugated, and then a couple other things like park, and the students have to add in all the words and conjugate the verbs. So it might be something like the tiger jumped quickly up into the tree, and the students have to add um, ed for jumped, and the ly for quickly, and up into as part of the prepositional phrase. So that's a dehydrated sentence. I should have had an example for you. I'm sorry. And close activities, you've seen these before. They're paragraphs that have blanks in them, and the students have to add in the word in the paragraph. And true and false. Often, a close-ended exercise in our classes might be when we call on a student to answer a question. For example, what is your name? Well, my name is Ahmed. That's only one right answer if you ask the student to actually respond with their name, right? What is your favorite color? My favorite color is red. Okay. These kinds of questions are good beginnings when you're starting with students, especially lower level students, lower proficiency students, because they scaffold the language up. And they're easy to grade. We love them. They're easy to grade, right? We can make sure if the students know the right answer. But there are drawbacks. There are problems with these. They're typically not very authentic for real world language use. Okay, we can make them a little authentic, but sometimes they're not. They're not very personalized often. I mean, you can ask people things like, what's your name and what color do you like? And those are more personal. But sometimes students are expected to answer things that don't represent who they are. And sometimes they're not very meaningful or motivating to students. And they do not allow for the amount of input that the students need in terms of language, interaction that they need, and output that they need, the speaking that they need or writing that they need to allow for second language acquisition. And that one is the most important part. So let's talk for just a second about interaction and second language acquisition. And I promise you, I won't go too much into the theory. So this is all based on research occurring over the last 45 years. 45 years of research on interaction and second language acquisition. And it really started with Michael Long's work in 1980 and 1981. And it's been built upon by Merrill Swain with the pushed output hypothesis, McKay and Gass and Gu, and so many more people who have been involved in the research on interaction. And that this research has repeatedly demonstrated that interaction is one of the most essential elements, the most important parts of students learning English, right? If we want our students to be able to use English when they leave our programs, we need to have that interaction. That's what the research tells us. So again, I'm not going to read everything. You can read this later. So what's the relationship between, say, tasks or task-based language instruction or language teaching and communicative teaching? So these two areas, communicative language teaching and task-based language teaching, both of them are based on interaction theory, okay? And they're very similar to each other. So don't worry too much about how they look similar. Okay. My students at home, they get so hung up on how they're similar. I'm like, don't worry about that. It really doesn't matter. You're not going to research this, so don't worry about it. So task-based instruction, or task-based language teaching, as it's also known, is just one of several realizations of communicative language teaching. So think of communicative language teaching as coming from interaction, and it's an umbrella for a lot of different types of instruction. And task-based instruction is just one of those types. And other realizations are, say, content language instruction and that sort of thing. Content-based language instruction, text-based syllabuses, and immersion instruction. So there's a lot of different areas related to it. So David Noonan says, it is possible to find essentially grammar-based curriculum that fit comfortably within the overarching philosophy of communicative language teaching.
فين الفرش؟ كده.
Okay, sorry. Got a little distracted.
Yes,
So basically, we can put grammar into communicative language teaching. So we don't have to throw that out. The second point is basically that tasks have been proven in second language research to allow for acquisition of meaning and forms. And finally, task-based instruction works in any language and can aid in the development of communicative competence. So look at all these citations, famous names, years of research that have said that this allows the interaction we need for learners to acquire the language. Now, I promised you I'd move on from theory, and we're done with that. So I just wanted to give you our basis for where this is coming from. So I keep talking about tasks. So I'm going to define a task. Task-based language teaching or language learning is basically built on this idea that you can give students a task that is primarily focused on meaning. So it's primarily focused on the meaning, and it has some sort of gap, meaning the students have a gap in knowledge between each other, like one of them is going to share something the other one needs. That's an example of a gap. The participants choose their linguistic resources they need to complete the task. So they're so open-ended, the students get to choose what grammar forms they use to complete the task. So if they're not really strong, they might choose a less complex form. But if they're stronger, they can challenge themselves with a more complex form. And finally, a task has clearly defined outcomes. So let's look at some communicative activities, and we're going to get into tasks later. So communicative activities that we're looking at today are structured discussions, debates, and monologues, values clarification and debates, role plays, which include skits, simulations, dialogues, and plays, and games, guessing games, charades, hypothetical games. So I've been talking about communicative language teaching and open-ended activities. So here's your definition. Communicative activities are activities that focus on, that give students the freedom to answer as they want. They can choose any sort of answer. So a question might be, if you were doing just a simple question and answer activity, something like you see at the bottom, do you have a cat? And Speaker B has all these options. Yes, I have a cat. I have a Siamese cat. My family has 3 cats. No, I don't have a cat. Or I don't like cats. They can answer in a whole lot of different ways. So open-ended means that there's a lot of choice, right? The students have a lot more choice to answer as they want, as opposed to saying, do you have a cat? Yes, I have a cat. Or yes, I have 2 cats, something like that, where it's very narrow. So communicative activities are similar to language exercises, and they provide manipulative practice. So practice the learners can manipulate the language. Ezra, I keep muting people who come in and who are unmuted because
Yeah,
it's
of
kind
course.
of,
Yes, I'm
yeah.
going to mute them all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So, so students have language they have to manipulate, change around, play with in a restricted set. So only a small set of language items. So they don't have one, they have a smaller set of items, right? They resemble tasks in that they have elements of communication. And this is according to Noonan, but there are endless possibilities for correct answers. So in this visual, you'll see these pink lines. Do you see the 3 pink lines on the screen? They're running across horizontally. You see the 3 pink lines? The first one, oops, go back.
Yeah.
First one is here. The second one is here. The third one is here. Can you see my cursor? I don't know if you can. So the first one, it has all these pictures. The second one, it looks like it starts with a sentence, and then the students have to complete that. That's a sentence completion or a fill in the blank. And the third one is something else completely. Think about which ones of these would be a close-ended activity with one right answer. The first one definitely has only one right answer. They listen and then they circle what they're hearing in the listening. One right answer for each of those items, 1 to 28. Okay, they can choose 1 to 28. Number B, the second one, is also close-ended exercise. It only has one right answer. They listen to something. Where is something located? Right? But the third one, C, it's a completely different animal. What about you? On a separate piece of paper, write the furniture and appliances you have in the rooms in your house. So they are thinking about their rooms, their house, and they're writing the things that are meaningful to them in their home. And it's very open-ended. Okay. So this is a very communicative activity. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Marwa. Yes, you're absolutely right. Very open-ended. So there are some kinds of activities that allow students to have more interaction. They're more meaningful. They're going to be more motivating. So I'm going to jump back for a second. So you can see the first 2 are necessary. We need those because they help us get from no knowledge to being able to talk about the things in their houses, but we can't skip that last one. And that's what happens a lot. We run out of time and we skip the last one, right? Well, I've done that before. Run out of time and skip the last one. So we have to make sure that we're pacing in a way in our classes that we're getting to that last one, or we're pacing over the course of a week, that we're always getting to the communicative activity, because that is going to be a place for most interaction and learning. Now, we could expand that activity and say, now turn to your table partners and tell them what you have, and everybody will create a survey of what everybody has. Does everyone have a bed? Oh, yes, 4 people in our group have a bed. Okay, I'm sure they have a bed. How many people have a dishwasher? Ooh, 2 people have a dishwasher, right? One person has a dishwasher. Nobody has a dishwasher, right? How many people have a clothes washer, right? So those sorts of survey questions to make it much more interesting. So you can extend that. And I'm going to show you how to extend these with other activities. So we can add into our books and curriculum anywhere to add these sorts of activities that make it more interesting for students. Adding structured discussions, debates. I've already mentioned some of these: values clarification, role plays, songs, and games. So this is one that I love. It's from the University of Michigan Press. It's a book called A to Zany. I know it's a strange book title. Stafford, how did they say that? Yimaz, 1998. So it's an older book, but I love this book. They're not publishing books like this anymore. And the reason that they're not publishing books like this anymore is I think publishers believe these can be found on the internet, but they don't understand that there are people in the world that don't have reliable access to the internet. So something to think about. Anyway, so this is one activity, a structured discussion. So let's say you were going to have them attend a virtual art museum online in the class using a device if they have them, or they were going to read about arts and entertainment from a local newspaper. And so you have them think before the activity about these questions. Think about art. What is art? That's a very open-ended kind of conversation. Write your own definition of the word, right? And so you take them through these activities. This is American-centric in number 6, but it could be changed. Sorry about that. What is the difference between a gallery and a museum? That's a really complex question. So they could look that up. What is the difference in their opinion? They could discuss it. And they go through those many of these questions, and then they read about it, and then they discuss what's happening next. What's happening? What's the event? So number 11, read through the activity, make sure you understand it, work with a classmate and a teacher. And so they have other questions after they read, and they discuss those. So this is one kind of discussion, and we give them the questions to think about and respond to, and they're open-ended. It doesn't have to be all about as complex as art, but it could be on anything that they have at their level, any topic you're studying. So another one, and we just set the questions. That's all. It's pretty easy. So we can scaffold those questions. We can make them complex. We can make them easier depending on our learners. If you're working with very young learners, say second grade, you might be talking to them about the types of animals in the world, right? And they could be talking about animals they've heard about, animals they like. They could find out about different animals. So there's a lot of different things you can do with that. The second type of activity is a values clarification. And basically, the idea behind a values clarification is that the students get to express their values, their beliefs about a topic. And all you do is find out a question that they want to respond to. Let's think of one. Oh, how do you feel about the Aswan Dam on the Nile? Right? They could respond, I think it's a good thing for Egypt. I think it's been a bad thing for Egypt. This is why. And we always have them give their opinions and their beliefs about this, their values about it. That's just a topic that came up off the top of my head. I used this when I was working in Ukraine on a Fulbright scholarship, and I had to cover politics. And we had some interesting times when I was there in Ukraine. Um, there was tension between whether they wanted to be more democratic or more authoritarian. And so I asked them these questions. They were high school students in Ukraine. Which is best for Ukraine right now? A strong authoritarian leader or a more democratic leader that works with groups to negotiate a vision and thus looks weaker? Or it takes more time, right? And they had the most interesting conversations around this. They got to express their values about it. I had my opinion, but my opinion didn't matter. It was them sharing their opinions and talking and writing about it. And I wasn't going to share my opinion, actually. I didn't ever. Um, so Students can discuss this individually and then with the whole class, so that a small group of people at a table could talk, and then they could share what they came up with at their table. Well, most of us agree that this is the best sort of leadership model, or there's this other leadership model we'd prefer. I don't know if that's something you could talk about in Egypt right now, but this is an example of a question that for clarification, right? So you can ask any sort of question that allows students to share their opinions, and it can be based on what grade level they are. So their maturity level, what kinds of questions can they handle that goes with the curriculum. The next type of activity are role plays and dialogues, skits and simulations, the whole deal. And you've probably seen these in your books before. Many of you probably do this activity type. They're very important for dialogue development and practice. They are easy to make and simple. You simply re-envision the environment where the transaction's occurring. For example, at a hotel front desk. So you come up with the environment, where is this, or the situation, where is this happening? And then you can come up with, you can ask them to create a dialogue around that. If you have students, I don't know, what's a topic you might have with very young learners starting out? Oh, clothing. So they're going to go buy some clothing. They're learning about clothing. What do you say to find something you're looking for in a store? What are the kinds of questions you would need to ask? Think about something you would like to buy and what kinds of questions you would ask somebody who works at the store to find the item and to make sure that you can try it on and those sorts of things. And so they prepare a skit around that or a role play. They can write a dialogue and perform it for the class. So a skit and a role play, usually those are impromptu where the students don't have time to prepare them, but they could write them out. And that becomes more like a dialogue. So if you have lower level students or younger students, you can create the dialogue for them to perform. Intermediate and advanced proficiency students can come up with them spontaneously and enact their roles or write a script. And you can elaborate on this activity to provide learners with their roles as well as a secret problem. And this is something I have done a lot. I love the secret problem for them to deal with. For example, okay, you're on holiday, you need to check into your hotel room. And they have their skit, they're going to check in, and then I say, oh, wait, there's a problem. The room that you reserved or want to reserve has a king size bed and not two small beds. What do you do? Or it has two small beds and not a king size bed. What do you do? Or the room smells like smoke, right? So you can give the students a problem in the middle of it, and they can then modify from there. So they could still be writing their dialogues when you give them the problem, right? So I love, Asra, that you said that's beneficial, asking them to create their own dialogues. It really is in performing those things. Now, some of these items you may have seen before. So I understand that, but we're going to get into some areas that maybe you haven't seen in a little bit. So the tour organizer is one that I did with some students in upper elementary school. And I asked them to basically, they were going to be interpreters or tour guides, and they had a group of people, and I gave them their group of people. I'll show you. This is their group of people. The names, the occupations, the room preferences, and then miscellaneous information like, I don't eat seafood, or they want a hotel with laundry service. I gave them these problems to solve, and then I asked them to create an itinerary of where they were going to take their tour group throughout Europe and evaluate the hotels in those areas. Like, what are they looking for a hotel? for their very picky group of people, and then choose the best hotel for them and write a justification why. So one of the most important parts of communicative activities is asking the why question. Why and how? So one of the reasons why we have to ask these questions is that it requires students to give us longer answers. They don't just give us an answer, they have to justify their answer or explain their thinking. So why do you think that this is the best choice? Or how would you do such and such thing? And then they have to really think it through and give you more information. And thus they're using the language more, they're interacting more. So very important. The last thing is maybe they do a dialogue to call the hotel to make a reservation and make sure they're conveying the most important information about their tour group. And they could do that with a partner or a small group of people. And they could even have people in their group who are part of their tour. We're very picky. So there's a lot of things you could just do around that. And we do usually with young learners or beginners, we do a chapter on travel. So it's very common to do that. And we can build into these communicative activities if they're not in our curriculum or if they're not in our books. The next type of activity is hypothetical games, and these are very, very easy to create. I love hypothetical games. Actually, in the US right now, and I don't know if this is going on in Egypt, but in the US right now, would you rather is kind of a game that people play. Would you rather do this or would you rather do this? And they're usually really difficult choices between two really hard things. So, for example, we've got a hypothetical. If you were an alien anthropologist, and you encountered the following items. Now, with young learners, I wouldn't say anthropologist, I'd just say alien collecting information about Earth. And you encountered the following items. How would you describe them? What are they used for? And then I would list the items, like a paperclip and other things, I might even put some on their tables, like this little pouch of things that are weird and odd that we have in our worlds. Like I have this on my desk and it's a little cartoon thing, but when I take its head off, it's actually a USB thumb drive. So why do we have these strange things in our lives? I might put some strange things in little plastic baggies and put them out on their table and ask them what they're used for from an alien's perspective. That means that they can say anything about these items. Well, a paperclip, it's used to scratch your back when you want. I don't know. It could be anything. Another hypothetical, for example, is if your ship is going down and you could grab a certain number of things, 3 things, what would they be and why? Or if you could only save X number of people from the list, who would that be and why? And you could have people and maybe their skills or their knowledge, like a doctor. Well, that might be a good person to save, right? So those are some of the things you can give them. Very easy to create. You could just ask the questions, possibly give them lists of items, and you can add real objects if you want, but you really don't even need to. If you knew a close friend and had committed a crime, what are your options? What would you do? That's getting into values clarification a little bit because it's a little bit about their values, but it's still a really good hypothetical question. And would you rather? Um, would you rather rather have a pet shark or a pet iguana? Two not so lovable kinds of critters to have as pets. But some students might really enjoy answering that question, particularly boys. I could see them really enjoying answering that kind of question. And honestly, when I think about these things, I do think about reaching the different populations within my classroom, like who in the classroom would really respond to this sort of question, or what do they really enjoy or their interests? Can I put their interests into these activities? So now we'll get into some tasks. And this is, I think, a little bit more interesting and different. So information gap tasks, where they have a gap in knowledge between two people, categorizing, sorting, and matching, surveys, questionnaires, and checklists, problem solving, and jigsaw activities. So back to what is a task. It is task-based language teaching is an experiential methodology, meaning they experience the language while they're doing something. And it's comprised of real life things that they need to do in the world to increase learners' verbal and written interaction. So I might say speak, but it might also be write as well. And I talked earlier that the tasks involves a primary focus on meaning, a gap, that they choose their own resources, language resources, and that task is clearly defined. It has a clearly defined outcome. So when you give a task, they have to produce something at the end. Unlike a communicative activity where they may not produce anything at the end, with a task, they have something that they produce, a product. So Willis and Willis in 2001 said they view tasks as a classroom undertaking where the target language is used by the learner for a communicative purpose or goal in order to achieve an outcome, that kind of product that they're going to produce at the end. So some task criteria are that they must have an identifiable goal or outcome, a series of steps language learners must take, exchanging information and sharing ideas and meanings, processing of language to communicate a real message, not just to manipulate grammar forms. A task may also have a real life activity, something you do regularly, and a product as an outcome. They might actually produce something. So here are some examples of a task. Prepare a brochure about indigenous cultures and artisanal crafts in your community. So it would be really cool, wouldn't it, for your community to have a brochure of the types of crafts and cultural items made in their community, right? And they produce that in English. They could put it on the internet even once you corrected it, right? Yeah, you like that. You like that, Ezra? Cool. I'm glad you're interacting with me. It's cool. I'm reading. And then examples. Describe your room to appear from a personal picture. Find out what is similar in both of your rooms. So the outcome is finding out what's similar, right? So the goal or outcome is important. Here are some task types. The information gap, it can be one way where a student has information and they convey it to a partner who has none. Okay, so they might have to tell the student about something. Okay, or it could be two-way, where each of them has some information the other one needs. Okay, and I love this. One of my favorite two-way tasks of all time is when a person it's from the book Well Said. One of my favorite, yes, I will send you the PowerPoints. One of my favorite books of all time is the book Well Said, and it's a pronunciation book. And it just teaches English pronunciation. It's so awesome. And I've taught a pronunciation class many, many times over the years, and that's the book I always use. And it's like the fourth or fifth edition now. It's just brilliant because it has pronunciation rules in it. But anyway, in it, in the book, they have this activity, this task at the end of the unit where one student has to call and make an order to fill their store's inventory. So the things they need from their store, they needed to call in and get new ones. Okay, so they call the place that they're ordering with, and the place that they're ordering with, the person who receives the call, has what they have in stock, right? So they have a list of things they have and things they don't have. Okay, and so between the two, the person calling to make the order has to find out what's in stock and needs to make the order. And the person who's taking the order needs to confirm and clarify and tell the first person, I'm sorry, we don't have that, or we only have 2 of those and not 4 of those. So it's one of my absolute favorite items, and it's beautiful in how it's set up. Sorry. So it can be text-based or it can be visual too. You can have 2 visual items, and I'll show you some. Ranking tasks are one I use all the time, and it's very easy to use. And I'll explain why. Categorize, sorting, and matching, surveys, questionnaires, checklists, problem solving, and the jigsaw environment activities. Okay, so this is a visual of a 2-way information gap activity. If you look on the side on the right, you'll see the pink arrows again. Do you see the pink arrows? Okay, good. So mid-page and at the bottom. So you see it says partner A's picture at the first pink arrow, the top one. And the bottom one says partner B's picture. So what you could ask students to do if they're, by the way, these were the bottom one was upside down on the page. So you ask the student to turn the book over. It's really kind of cool, right? But you could also have a student put paper over it, or you could just give students an image on a piece of paper that they have, and each different group has different ones. So I usually copy them out, and I'll give partner A and partner B to different people and ask them to stand up and find a person they don't normally work with and who has the opposite picture. So find an A for your B or a B for your A. And then they need to find out what's different about their pictures. The questions are at the top. Ask your partner questions about his or her picture. Answer questions about your picture. How many lamps are there in the bedroom? Is the sofa green? Does the bathroom have a shower? Right? And those things can change, obviously. How many blanks do you have in the bedroom? How many beds do you have in the bedroom, for example? So the students have a lot more information that they need to be able to use to be able to complete this task. And then at the bottom, you can say, now I can talk about where I live, describe my home, name furniture and appliances. Those are the goals. So an information gap activity is basically a spot the difference activity. These are tasks that are 2 students have slightly different sets of information, and they need to share that information orally or in written form to complete the task. So you could take 2 pictures from the internet, and you can find tons of spot the difference activities on the internet. Or you could take a picture that you have and manipulate that picture, especially with AI. That would be really fun to manipulate a picture with AI and tell it, okay, add this, take away that, and you'd get different sorts of pictures. So now with AI, you could create some really interesting information gap activities. Oops, sorry. I clicked on the wrong screen. Okay, here are 2 more. The first one on the left, and these are come from the book by Frederica Klippel. It's my favorite techniques book called Keep Talking. It is a wonderful book. Oh, Esra, you like the idea that students should find a partner they haven't normally worked with. I do that all the time. It really builds trust among the students and your community and your classroom, and they're more likely to be comfortable sharing and be more confident with their language. So I have them move partners all the time. I don't let them sit with their friends all the time. I don't let them choose their seats. I have little name badges they create on the first day, and I keep them and I move them around on the tables. So yeah, I do a lot around that. Okay, so the first one is where are my glasses? And there are some things in the picture you have to find. You see the glasses, pipe, radio, pillow, newspaper, umbrella in the top. And the person in the bottom has to find a toothbrush, a pen, crayons, gloves, a purse, and a hat, right? In a very cluttered, messy room. But each of them has information the other one doesn't have. So if you look at glasses in the bottom side, or in the bottom picture, because you cut it in half,
Hager.
you'll see the glasses near the lamp. It's near the lamp in the second picture in the bottom. You see it? And the toothbrush in the top picture, or the hairbrush in the top picture, is
Bigger.
right in the middle of the floor. Sounds like we've got a frog in the room.
So I muted that.
It's okay. I just think it's funny. So the next one is the town plan. And this is a map of the town where they have to find the buildings, right? And so each of them have different buildings, but they're all marked and numbered. But they have to find certain buildings that only the other one knows where they are. Okay. So for example, number 10 is near the post office. Number 10 is the post office. But if you look at the center of the top one, it says post office next to the town square or the market square. And the bottom one, it does not say post office. So the person needs to find out what is the square for number 10. And that's the post office. So these come from Frederica Klippel's book. It's a 1985 book. Again, they don't make these books anymore. So if you want to get your hands on them, you could probably get them relatively cheap, but they might be harder to find. Information gap. So this is how you create them. You modify an information gap test so both students are missing information the other one has. And that's for a two-way. And you can employ two variations of a written passage instead of a visual. So you can take one written passage and as your main, you copy it twice and you blank out some of the different things. Oh, that's funny. I raised my own hand when I have my hands up. I'll turn it off later. You can make a one-way information gap by taking a visual or a text that is topic appropriate and photocopying it twice, delete or white out some of the information from one copy, and then make copies from the original for student A and a modified copy for student B. For a two-way, you take your visual or text and you make two extra copies, deleting different information from both sets. So you have your A and your B copy. Let's talk about ranking. Ranking, I told you, is one of the easiest things. I use it all the time. Books I use have lists all the time. They have lists, right? So I've come up with an example on the right. What is the most important part of choosing an occupation to you personally? Okay, so what do you want to do in the future? What's most important to you? Make money, have steady, secure job, being involved in professional associations, serving the public, having a prestigious job, making it personally rewarding or satisfying. We know teachers do that, right? So students then have to rank the ones that are most important to them or the least important to them. I don't usually ask students to rank 11 items. It takes forever and they have a hard time with it. The maximum I can ask students to rank is about 5. So I say, take the top 5. What's the most important? What's the second important? And so forth to number 5. And maybe sometimes I'll ask them to do what is one of the least important things on your list? Having mobility to travel, right? Who knows what they would say. So that's one that I would you can create from just creating a list. You can write your list on the board so you don't even have to have copies or anything. And students then would be working with different jobs. Oh, Amira's like, oh, money would come first for our students. Maybe it would, but maybe you'd find out that for some students, money's not the most important thing. Money's important, but maybe it's other things too, right? Having like a long-term job. For me, that was a huge thing as an educator. I wanted a long-term job. You know, I didn't want to lose my job just because somebody changed it. Somebody said in the chat, let's see here. Ezra said, I like the idea that students should find a partner. Okay, wonderful idea. Okay, informative questions. It depends, Ezra says. Yep, it absolutely depends. But yes, money will tend to be number one. But maybe you can say to them, okay, money's not on the list. You could take money off the list. Of the items on the list, what's most important? If you think everybody's going to say money and that's boring, then take it off the list. You make the list. That's what's so cool about it, right? Sometimes your books will have lists of items. So what I do is I don't like to go through the list of items because it takes a lot of time and I'm reading out loud and the students are usually bored. So what I do is I create a ranking activity. And what we do with that is we change the most important to another, adverb, or, not adverb, I'm sorry, adjective. What's most interesting? What is most scary? I mean, there could be all kinds of things that come up there as your descriptor word, right? So ranking tasks can be employed with any numbered list. You can check out your readings in your book to see about any lists that you might have. It can actually work with things like lists of vocabulary words. You could say which of these vocabulary words do you like the most? Which one's the hardest to remember? And you can engage them around that. There are lots of things you can do with ranking activities. I love them because they're so easy to make and you don't need any materials. Yeah, maturity counts. That's right, Amira. So the essential idea is that you choose an adjective for a comparison or a superlative, and to get them to order those items. And if they do it individually, if they rank the items individually, they can turn to a partner and find out the differences. Or maybe they turn to three other students, the table in front with the table in back, they turn to talk to each other. Or maybe you group them in the room, counting them off 1 to 4, and then you move the groups around, right? So there's a lot of possibilities there for having them move around the room and find out what the other ones think is important or scary or whatever your adjective is going to be, right? So you can have a list of the qualities of an ideal roommate. You can have the learners read them and rank them, talking about those things, and then they can work with a partner to discuss their rankings and the rationale for their decisions, the why question. Why are these most important? That's where we get to the longer expanses of text. That's where we get them to talk more. So I created, oh wait, this is another category, categorizing, sorting, and matching, another task. So you can ask students and sort them to ask them to sort items into groups and develop categories for the vocabulary and matching items. Okay. So I created one for you for this one. And I have to tell you, when I was trying to find the media outlets in Egypt, I didn't know which ones were like really important ones or good ones. And I couldn't tell you if they exist today. I just couldn't tell. So if some of these don't make any sense, my apologies, but I tried to find ones that would be relevant in Egypt. Sort the media outlets into credible and reliable or not credible and not reliable. And that teaches them to look at sources, which is a really important thing, right? So, and then they have to answer the why question and why. So, which ones of these are the most reliable? Al Jazeera, BBC Middle East, Aram, the internet. Is that reliable? Yum7, Gulf News, Arab News. Which ones of these are more reliable and credible and which ones aren't? And why? Why do you think this? Right? And you could throw in some that are horribly uncredible. I just don't know which ones are good and which ones are bad, but I created this list for you. So you only need to provide learners with the vocabulary words that they can cut them apart. They can list them by writing them as you wish. If you've got paper for them to cut it apart, great. If you don't, that's fine too. In the United States, we give them like little pieces of paper and they actually sort them to categories physically. But you don't need to do that. You could have them write them down and just write the list on the board and they have to categorize and write the words down. You can offer them categories as credible, non-credible, or you can offer them, or you can ask them to categorize things themselves. And that's a very open-ended task to ask somebody, just categorize these, sort these, match them the way you see fit. So I've given this task to people before. I've given people in little plastic baggies pennies, little Monopoly people, or not Monopoly people, life game people, and little houses. Okay, from the Monopoly game. I know, it's crazy. And I said to them, sort these. Just sort them, put them into categories. And now naturally, some people will put all the people together, all the pennies together, and all the houses together. But some people will give a house to each of the people and pennies to each of the people representing money, right? Different ways to categorize. So, and that's the thing. And then you ask them, why did you categorize them this way? Right? So you see how the students are thinking and acting. And if they have to categorize together, they have to discuss what they're doing and why. Right? So if they've got a group of 4 doing it together, you've got a lot of interaction going on here. And they might not agree, which is great because that's what you want them to do, right? Very beneficial, the why question. I should have a slide every other page, why question or the how question, right? Yes, I will give a few more minutes at the end. Are we getting close to time now, Ezra?
Yes, yes. So just take your time. So yeah, we'd
Oh,
love to hear more about that.
okay.
That's really
So,
beneficial.
oh, cool. Most importantly, ask the students why. Okay, so the surveys, questionnaires, and checklists are also very fun. I use them a lot. You may have heard me already referring to things. Students can turn to their partners and survey and find out what everybody had for breakfast, right? It could be a warm-up activity. Okay, this morning you're going to survey 10 students in the classroom and write it down what they ate for breakfast and what they drank for breakfast, right? Or you can survey the students the next day, survey 10 students coming in the door, what they're going to do after school. So it's a very open-ended thing, lots of ways the students can use language. They can use a lot of different kinds of language. And the thing is that they might at different levels, especially at the beginner level, they might not have all the words in English or all the phrases in English, and that's okay. Recent work in research has been supporting the idea of translanguaging. And the idea, I'm writing it down because it's a strange word. The idea is that students are using whatever language resources they have. So we want to encourage them to use as much English as possible. But if they need to add in a phrase in Egyptian, in Arabic, you know, they can do that, right? So we don't want to restrict their language use. We want them to be able to use whatever language skills and resources they have. So surveys are great for starting a new topic. What do you know about this topic? Okay, today we're talking about volcanoes. My favorite topic, volcanoes. I find them fascinating. So what do you know about volcanoes? And the students can then survey each other and find out what they know. Circulate in the room and find out from 5 students what they know about volcanoes, people you haven't worked with before, right? And maybe they have to write their names down so you know if they've worked with them before, right? So you can keep track of them. They only take a minute to design or to ask students to do, and students have to write the stuff down. If you're studying occupations, for example, you could provide a short list of occupations. The word, this is a long list of occupations, but maybe you would modify that for your context and your grade level. I did this with slightly older students, and the students circulate around the room, and maybe they find out, you ask them to choose the most prestigious, the coolest, most creative, or most rewarding occupation. And you choose the adjective or the superlative and ask them to gather the data. So the students circulate and find out what students want to do in the future. I want to be an architect. Oh, you want to be an architect? Why? Do you want to be an architect? Well, because I think buildings are interesting in how they're constructed. Okay, maybe the students don't know how to say constructed. Maybe that's a part of the phrase that goes in Arabic. Okay, so they just circulate and they maybe count the number of students who wanted to be an accountant or who want to be an actor or be a social media influencer, which is definitely not on the list, but they would probably say these days. And then problem-solving activities. So this is a problem-solving activity I did in Ukraine in 2008. I gave them this image I'd taken near their public market. And I said, so where is this? And they had no idea. And then eventually they figured out in their groups that this, I just showed it on a screen. I didn't give them individual pictures. I just showed it on a screen. And I said, um, so where is this? And they had to figure it out that that was along the river near their market. And I said, what do you think is wrong here? And they said, we didn't realize how much trash there was, how much pollution there was. And that all of that gets into the river. I'm like, yeah. And so then we started talking about pollution and global warming and other issues related to those topics. And so I asked them, what would you do to solve this problem of the trash near the market? How would you solve the problem? If you could, what would you do? And they come up with a whole variety of things. It said, they said, oh, we'd have containers for the trash, or we'd have people come and pick it up, or we'd start a media campaign to inform people of why it's bad to throw the trash on the ground in the first place, right? Or we'd create a recycling program. So they came up with all kinds of solutions to this problem for their community. Another problem-solving task that I've used a lot with students, and they love this. This comes from Klippel's book, Keep Talking. You give them this room visual, and it has windows and a door. This is the door in the middle, and then all these little parts of the furniture. And then each of the parts of the furniture is a certain number of points. So they have a budget. So they can only spend so much money. You like that one, Amira? So they can only solve so much, or only use so much points. They only could buy so much stuff, but they're going to do it with two people. So how will they arrange their room with two people with a limited budget? You can't put everything in. What will you put in? The most creative way I've ever seen this solved is they decided not to get a bed, which was a lot of money, and they decided to get a whole bunch of cushions and put them on the floor, all over the floor. I was like, that's pretty creative, you know? So it worked. But they problem solved this, right? They had to stay in their 100-point budget. Another category of activity is jigsaw activities. And these two here in this visual comes from Klippel, and they are literally supposed to cut the pictures apart and reorder them into a story. And that's why it's a jigsaw. It's kind of like a puzzle that they reorganize. You can also do, that's a picture jigsaw, but you can also, and then they tell the story to each other, right? Out loud or in written form. So that's where the language is. So, or you could do a reading jigsaw. I like to use these when I have one learner read a section of a text and then and in depth, and then another student read another one. And so maybe of four people, they read the whole text, and then they have to share the information from their section with the other team. And so that's how they get all of the information from the reading together. And then you review the reading, and maybe you'll do a read aloud, or maybe you've done a read aloud, and then they do the jigsaw after that. That way they get a second reading of the text, but they hear it first, then they get to read it, and then you could read it silently after. So having multiple views of that text will help them remember it better. So I use reading jigsaws a lot. Oh, okay. So how do I include tasks into lessons? I have a video that's in the PowerPoint. I'm not going to watch it now for time, but please do watch it. Think about real life situations or learning tasks that students need to be able to do. Or look at your curriculum. and think about how you can make your curriculum more engaging and meaningful to the students, right? Remember, those exercises only get you so far. They will bore your learners. The learners get very bored by them and they get disengaged. So we have to challenge the students beyond the exercises to communicative activities and tasks, because that's where the interaction is. So, so look at your curriculum, look where those items are missing, think about the tasks in the real life, consider the material learned and how they can lend themselves to tasks to be learned. Let the language be your guide. What language or what tasks lend themselves to the language your students need? So what language do the students need? What kind of tasks will get them there? A hypothetical task, for example, if you were, would get them to using modals. I should, I would, I could. And that's where some of the language comes in. So you can link to the language that they really need. And then last, think about the big picture. What projects do you think would allow your English learners to interaction on your learning targets and outcomes to be learned? So think about that big picture sort of thing. Is there some task that you can have them do, like creating a poster that might be very engaging with them, that they can demonstrate their work? So why should we do this? This is a big question. I kept saying why the whole time. Why should we do this? Especially if the tasks aren't in the book, right? Tasks cause students to process language in a meaningful ways, personal, deep ways. It compels students to learn more vocabulary. It allows for creativity and different ways of thinking about language. They also get to see each other's use of language, so they're learning from each other as well as from you. It provides 4 skills practice: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. It causes more authentic interaction among students, like real life. It makes the language more memorable, right? Because they're processing it more and more and more. It allows for input, negotiation, meaning, and output for learners, the things they need to acquire the language. Otherwise, they're not going to acquire the language. It forges neural pathways. If you believe in cognitive theory, they are making those connections in the brain that allow for an increased automaticity of language use. I do believe in cognitive theory as well as interaction. It allows for higher order thinking skills. So not just the lowest order of thinking of define and recall, but things like analyze and synthesize and evaluate, the things that are more cognitively challenging. And it reinforces grammatical and phonological forms. So they're secretly structural. They have the grammar and the phonology and the syntax and the semantics all in there. So it's all good for all of the things they need to learn in language. So when I have talked to different people in different places, especially in Africa, there are very large class sizes. Yes, that's a big challenge. And so when we have these really big class sizes, it's harder to manage interaction in the classroom. Yeah, the students are louder. They get into more trouble. They don't stay on task, the whole thing. So the key here is being really, really good at classroom management. Okay. So instead of teaching you about classroom management today, big class sizes, things like that, what I did was I came up with some resources that are good for you to read at these hyperlinks. All of these websites are brand new. I just did this research on Friday. So all of them are you, and you'll notice the last one, classroom management with large class sizes, and there are 4 hyperlinks there to different websites on how to manage large classes. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, my students, causing trouble, they're, not doing the work, this is, I think, gold for any teacher with large class sizes. But I have on here not just articles and research, but teacher, like, this is what I do in the classroom to handle this problem. Teacher written problem-solving kind of information. Edutopia is an awesome website with great material. And I have some podcasts and other things there. So it's not just the boring stuff. So I would like your classes to end up looking like this, aside from the coffee on the table. I would like your classes to end up looking like this, where students are talking to each other, as opposed to the picture at the beginning where they're not talking to each other and only the teacher's talking. I want them talking to each other because that's how language will be meaningful and how they will learn it. So thank you so much. I've just frozen on my video, so I'm going to restart myself 1 second. That's all I have for you today. I know we've gone a little late, but I would love it to hear from you, answer any questions you might have if we still have a moment or two.
Actually, thank you for such a beneficial session today. And before we go, I'd like to ask you here, actually, personally, I got involved and inspired by all of these activities and ideas. And I'd like to ask the attendees here, what is the most interesting activity that you'd like to present in your classroom? So listen from you, and it's actually I like the ranking classroom activity. So this is really beneficial, and I'm
So
gonna
easy to do.
yes, and I'm gonna try it.
I do it all the time. There are always lists in my textbooks. So I just have to come up with an interesting adjective. That's it. I try not to always go with most and least interesting, or most and least important, but I do tend to do those.
But it's really beneficial and informative at the same way. Oh, so yeah, the jigsaw. So jigsaw and problem solving tasks, yes, resonate with me. That's great. Yeah, Dr. Dot,
Excellent.
many thanks. Yes, Dr. Dot, thanks you.
I have
Dr.
a
K.
question.
And Mariam also, Nisreen. Actually, it's really a beneficial. I'd like to extend our heartful thanks to Dr. Reynolds for inspiring us with beneficial activities and ideas. I appreciate your priceless efforts and concerns actually to join us and to let us learn from you. So actually, we are speechless to thank you.
This is why it took me so long to get you the handouts. That's right.
Yes. So there's a
So
question, yes, or
yeah,
I
yeah,
have a question.
yeah, of course,
yes.
dear.
Thank you so much for this amazing session. I want to know about the jigsaw puzzle. It should be pictures only, or it can be sentences from text or something.
It can be sentences from a text very easily. So you
Yeah.
can just do a sentence at a time, or you could do a paragraph if you've got longer paragraphs. You can really manipulate that jigsaw in a variety of ways. The idea is that students are interacting with the text or interacting with the pictures and talking about the pictures and putting them in order. But if you have strips of sentences from a text, and by the way I usually do it, I put them in an envelope for each table. So I have the strips of sentences and I have them all in there and ask them put them back later. So, and I have each of the envelopes marked, 1 to whatever, and then I can hand out the envelope to a table of 4 and ask them to put the strips back, by the way. So that works really well to manage that. So you could just give them the sentence strips and say, okay, order these based on what you heard when I read the passage aloud, and then they have to reorder them in a way that makes sense. So they're interacting with the text, but they're interacting with each other
Mhm.
about the text. So yeah, you can
Thank
do
you
it
so
written
much.
wise. No problem, Samar.
Actually, I look at you all to just share us your insightful feedback. That's really help us to grow and improve with you. So we are continuing learning with you together. And actually, I'd like to thank you all for being there. This will be a really beneficial and event today. And there will be another event also with Dr. Nelly Deutsch next July, inshallah. So stay tuned on the Facebook group TEYL. So please scan this QR code and keep with the updates of the TEYL. We will share the recordings as well as the PDF. And if you have any questions, so we are there with you. Thank you very much. So please, yes, please scan this QR code before you go, and I will send you again the link. So just, yeah, yes, kindly share your feedback with us. Yeah. Yes, but it was a really beneficial task. Actually,
Hello.
yes,
Hello.
hello. Yes, hello.
Hello, dear Isra. So actually, it was quite informative. Thank you so much, Dr. Kate. Is she still here?
Yes, she's there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hello.
Hi, Maya.
How are you doing? It
Good,
was
good.
quite insightful. Thank you so much. I'm just wondering whether or not you already implemented scenario-based learning. Do you
Oh,
have an idea about it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we do all kinds of things in my work. And so yeah, if they're based on certain scenarios where they're going to find themselves to, solve problems, to interact, yes, we've absolutely done that. Are you doing that now?
Yes, actually, I'm aligning the scenarios with the TLU domains to prepare
Okay.
students for, yeah, to foster their employability skills. Yeah,
Excellent. Okay, so it's going
thank
to be
you.
around everything they need to do for work and to get a
Yeah,
job. Okay, that's
yes.
awesome. Yeah, so yeah, you can create so many tasks around that. I think you'll find that very useful to think about the kinds of real life tasks that they have to do in these different
Hmm.
scenarios, these different like events. Okay, so you're going to um, you need to prepare for an interview. Well,
Yeah,
the interview is one part of that, but maybe they need to think about how they're going to present themselves and
yeah,
share um, their responses to certain types of questions before they go
yeah,
into the interview. Like, think about what you would say if somebody says, "Why are you applying for this job? Why do you want to work
yeah.
here?" Right? So they
Uh,
have to think about it and they have to talk about it, and then they learn how to respond to that question from many different perspectives before they even
mhm.
get into an interview scenario.
Okay, so this is like reflective learning, right?
Well,
Can
yeah,
we
they would,
mix it with
yeah,
Bloom's taxonomy?
absolutely. Bloom's is, I talked a little bit that we can challenge the
Hmm.
learners to be more cognitively
Yeah.
complex. Absolutely. So something like, why do you want to work at this company?
Hmm.
You might ask them to reflect on that. Yes. Think about the reasons why this company is attractive to them. What does the company want to hear? What would appeal to the
Yeah.
company? What would not appeal to the company? Oh, I want to work there
Mhm.
because you pay well. Not a good idea, right? So, what are some of
Thank
the
you,
things
sir.
they can say and the things they can't say? And what
Yeah.
kind of research do you have to do beforehand to answer that question? Right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
a lot of research has to go into that. So maybe
Yeah.
students would choose a company
Hmm.
and that they want to work at, and then they have to go and look up about that company and find out what that company does, what they stand for, what
Hmm.
their values are, what their
Yeah.
mission is, and then they could speak to those, and then they could reflect on how those things align with their goals, their
Yeah.
desires. So that's,
Okay.
you can break down, it doesn't just have to be the
Yeah.
mock interview. It could be a
Yeah.
whole variety of things around that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank
No
you.
problem.
So thoughtful. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you all for such a wonderful session today. Thank you, Dr. Kate. I really appreciate your efforts. Thank you, dear attendees. Actually, I don't know how I cannot thank you enough, but
It has been truly my pleasure.
yeah,
And I just hope that that last picture, aside from the coffee, will be in all of your classes
yeah, of
in
course,
the future.
we'd love that.
It looks like
Yeah.
Aman has their hand up.
Okay, yes, dear.
Uh, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. I am Iman, also the coordinator of the Young Learner SIG. the night TESOL, and I truly learned a lot from you. Your activities were very practical, and you showed the teachers how to apply them in their classroom. So,
Good.
yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yes, and this is what we needed in our SIG. We need someone like you who can provide teachers with practical examples. And these examples are easy also to be applied in.
And actually ready to use, Iman. So it's impressive for all teachers here in Egypt.
Yeah, I mean,
We're blessed to
my
have you, Dr. Kate.
well, thank you so much, both of you. My goal is to not just give activities, but to give people strategies for creating activities so they understand, oh, this is how it's formatted. This is the kind of thing. This is the category it lies in. And then you have all these things you could go back to later and say, oh, this material lends itself to a survey. I'll have my students do a survey today. This material lends itself to a role play. I'm going to have my students do a role play. And then it's very easy to kind of, once you know the categories, very easy to kind of come up with them on your own. So yeah, y'all will be great. I know you will. By the way, I noticed there are several people in the room today who I've had the pleasure of working with when I was last in Egypt, working with the U.S. State Department, and I just want to say hello to all of you. And I don't want to call out everybody, but I do recognize some names in the room. Yes. Hello, Omar. It's good to see you.
Yes, yes, Dr.
Dua.
Dr. Omar, yes.
So very lucky. So thank you all again. And you'll have the PDF and the hyperlinks and everything, and you'll be able to go and check everything out. You can watch the video.
Yeah, all
And
elementaries, yes, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, it was a wonderful experience. Exactly. Last August, and that 2023, August 2023. So we learned a lot from Dr. Kate, and actually she provided us with beneficial ideas and how to present and how to stand and how to convince people. So it was really beneficial and helpful for us. So thank you from the deep of my heart, Dr. Kate, for that insightful, yes, ideas that you provided
Well,
us.
yeah. Thank you so
Um,
much.
Thank you, dear. Have a nice day, and
It is day for me. I've got the rest of my day ahead of me, but you
yes,
all have a
yeah,
good
for
night.
Egyptian, yes. So have a wonderful night and sleep
Yes.
tight,
Yes.
and see you
Okay.
in an next,
See you.
yes, in an like event. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.